Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another episode of In the Frame. Today's subject of In the Frame is Tilda Swinton, one of my favourite actors, arguably the greatest British actor of the last 35 years. Swinton is unbelievably versatile, extremely smart. She went to Cambridge. She manages to straddle mainstream films. She's been in Marvel films. She was the Snow Queen in the Narnia reboots, with a more arthouse, more avant-garde side. She can balance both. She's extremely versatile. She's one of the most unique as far as what she looks like. Earlier in her theatrical career, she's a bit androgynous. We'll get to one of the films where the gender bending is used to the best effect. She's brave. She doesn't mind looking bad in films. She doesn't mind bearing more than her soul in performances, and she's also really humble. If you listen to her interviews, she doesn't actually consider herself to be an actor. She views herself as just kind of an amateur. She kind of grew up with Derek Jarman. She's in like 7 Jarman collaborations, and she does the voiceover of Blue after Jarman died. So she's a really interesting actor. She's also a producer. She's directed a couple of things, and like I say, she always has one foot in the mainstream, because let's be honest, you got to pay your bills, but I think her heart kind of lives in the experimental and the art house side, and she's always willing to take chances. So I'm just going to go through the films of hers that I have on physical media. I'll probably pick up some more at some point, but let's just start with 1987 and Friendship's Death, which is on BFI, Blu-ray and DVD. This is a really interesting film. She plays an alien who lands on Earth. I think she was supposed to go to Washington, but she ends up in the Middle East, and she teams up with Bill Patterson's jaded journalist, and they have lots of philosophical conversations about humanity. Obviously she looks really young there, because she was. It's a fascinating piece, directed by Peter Wolin, who was more of a professor of cinema than actually made films. It's a great BFI release, and it's a very interesting film that I would recommend picking up. Again, perhaps not for everybody. So we have one of her Derek Jarman collaborations, The Last of England, which again Jarman did a lot on 16mm video. This again is a more expressionistic view of where Britain is in the late 80s. There's no real narrative, it's all the power of images, and it's rather interesting, as is this one, War Requiem, again with Jarman. Swinton plays a nurse, World War I nurse. This has an incredible opening with Larry Olivier, which might have been Laurence Olivier's last performance, I think, or one of his last performances, where he recites a poem, which is pretty powerful. This was inspired by Benjamin Britten's War Requiem. Again, it also features Sean Bean. Fortunately, he doesn't speak. Again, lots of striking imagery and really an effective statement on war. Jarman does use brutal images. Again, this second sight DVD is loaded with special features, including recollections with producer Dan Boyd, Tilda Swinton and Nathaniel Parker, and there's a live performance from Liverpool of the War Requiem as well, and there's a commentary with the producer. So that's another interesting Jarman piece that Swinton appeared in. Next is a BBC TV show, Your Cheating Heart, which was John Byrne's follow-up to Tutti Frutti in the 80s, late 80s again. I remember Tutti Frutti. I vaguely remembered Your Cheating Heart. It's a mix of the Scottish country and western scene. Yes, there is a Scottish country and western scene. And drug dealers and banter. I'm not sure those outside Scotland might need subtitles. You can see Gordon John Sinclair's there and Tilda Swinton's over here. That's Eddie Reader from Fairground Attraction. It is dated, but it's a 6-episode series. There's a lot of fun to be had in it, but again, probably not for everybody. And then after Jarman's death, obviously it took Swinton a bit of time to get over, but then she came back with Orlando, Sally Potter's unbelievably fantastic film. I did a random review of this some time ago. I remember it coming out at the time, but I never actually saw it, so I've only seen it in the last year, and it's an absolute stunner. This is the one that follows, it's set over 400 years, and it follows a man played by Tilda Swinton who after a while wakes up and he's a woman, and the effects of that on her life and how she is treated. It's an absolutely gorgeous film. I would highly recommend picking it up on Blu-ray rather than DVD. And Tilda Swinton is absolutely fantastic in it. It's just an amazing film, and it's one of those films that whenever I do an updated favourite 150 list, it's going to be in it. I've watched it a couple of times since. It's just absolutely stunning. So that's Orlando. And then a film that I've just done a random review of, Possible Worlds from the year 2000. This is about stealing people's brains and past, present and future, and memories and consciousness and dreams and imagination. You can go check out the random review, but again, it's another interesting little film, the kind of film that Tilda Swinton does a lot of in between the blockbuster appearances. Next is The Deep End, which I did a double take. This is a remake of Max Ophuls' The Reckless Moment with Joan Bennett and James Mason, and this is a modern take on it, which is actually pretty good as remakes go. Tilda Swinton plays a mother who's trying to help her son out, who's fallen in with a wrong kind of man, and an accident happens and she spends the rest of the film desperately trying to cover it up. It's a really nice little film, written and directed and produced by Scott McGee and David Siegel, who I'm not really familiar with the rest of their work. Then we have Thumbsucker, which is another example of your quintessential indie film about a struggling teen. Obviously, Tilda Swinton would be dealing with a troubling teen in one of her later films, who is still sucking his thumb. He gets put on medication and becomes a bit of a different person. Vince Vaughn is in it as his debate coach. Keanu Reeves as a philosophizing dentist. Vincent D'Onofrio as his dad, who was going to turn pro as an NFL player, but then hurt his knee. So he's kind of been dealing with that his entire career, or life, sorry. And Tilda Swinton plays the mother who dreams of meeting an actor on a soap opera or a TV drama. She's a nurse and ends up going to a drug treatment centre where that actor is being treated. It perhaps doesn't work completely, but again, it's an interesting little film full of quirky indie stuff. And again, it's the kind of small film that Tilda Swinton can do effortlessly. And then we have Michael Clayton, where she won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. This one kind of gets better the more times you watch it. It's kind of dry on first viewing. And Tilda Swinton, I would say, it's not actually her best work, but she did get an Oscar for it. Take that as much as you can. But she's still fantastic in it. And Clooney's very good as well. Then we have Julia, which is a film I didn't really like that much. It's about this woman in her 40s who still likes to party, and she ends up in a kidnapping plot by helping an unstable mother try and get her kid back. The film is 2 hours long and it's way too long, and then you watch the extras and the director originally had like a 5-hour cut he wanted to make of it, and it's like 2 hours is plenty. But again, it's a perfect example of Swinton just putting herself out there and again not caring what she looks like, because it's not a flattering performance, it's not a flattering role. But again, once she goes into a project, she's willing to look as bad as that character requires her to look. And it's not a particularly nice character, and she does let everything hang out. Next is the Coen Brothers Burn After Reading, which again on first viewing I wasn't that impressed with, but I think it does actually get better the more times you watch it. Swinton plays the wife of John Malkovich, who's a spy who's decided to give up but sell his secrets. It is daft and stupid, but it's also quite clever. It has one of the best last lines, or last few lines, in cinema history, and compared to some of the other Coen Brothers later work, it actually stands out as being one of their best, I think, once you're in on the joke, essentially. And then we have Jim Jarmusch's Limits of Control. Again, Swinton does like collaborating with the same people every now and again. Obviously she did that with Jarman. She's done it with Jarmusch, she's done it with the Coen Brothers, and she's done it to somebody we'll get to shortly. This is almost a companion piece to Ghost Dog Way of the Samurai. It's another Hitman piece, but this is much more oblique. She does have a wonderful cowgirl outfit in it. Again, it also stars lots of other famous faces, and even just doing little bits. But for Jarmusch, people will do little bits. Next is I Am Love, from the director of the Suspiria remake, which I still haven't seen, which Tilda Swinton's in. Yeah, Luca Guadagnino. That's not his real name, but that's what I'm calling it. And Swinton actually learned Italian and Russian for this film. And she stars as the wife of the son of the Ricci family, who are big in textiles and fashion in Milan. Again, another Italian film about textile factories. Seems to be a common theme. And she ends up having an affair with her son's friend, who is a chef. It's about the revolutionary nature of love, apparently. It's not necessarily a film that I would have bought otherwise if it wasn't for Tilda Swinton being in it. But it's actually very good. It's quite beautiful. It does have a sudden dramatic turn near the end of the film. To me, it's more interesting as a kind of film about class rather than a film about revolutionary love. But if you like films about revolutionary love, then it'll probably be right up your street. But for me, it's more interesting as a tale about class and how the rich act and use the people around them. And then this was another great award-winning film. We need to talk about Kevin, where Swinton's absolutely fantastic as a mother who has a troubled teenager. We'll just leave it at that if you haven't seen it. Arguably Lynn Ramsey's finest film. Good support from John C. Reilly and Ezra Miller as the son. Amazing film, one of Swinton's best. If you're picking out films to watch, if you're not familiar with the Swinton. Then we have the first collaboration with Wes Anderson, Moonrise Kingdom, which is a lovely little film. Again, people can criticise Wes Anderson for not being based in reality or his films being whimsical, but sometimes you just need that kind of film. And you could argue this is the last film where Bruce Willis actually looked as though he cared. In 2012, Swinton plays social services. It's not in it much, but again, she makes an impact when she comes in. Next, we have Only Lovers Left Alive, Jarmusch's masterpiece of a vampire film. And Swinton is absolutely spectacular in it. I think she plays a 400-year-old vampire who has a toy boy in Tom Hiddleston, who's only 200 years old. It's just absolutely superb. It's one of the best films of the 21st century. Because Jarmusch actually makes a point which not a lot of people make about vampires. If you've been around that long, think of all the music and all the culture and all the books you would have read. It's more about the effects of that and the effects of having a long life than running around sucking blood. There's not much quote unquote vampire action in it. It's more about keeping a long-term relationship, literally. It's absolutely wonderful, and if you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend it. Next is the first of two Bong Joon-ho collaborations, which is Snowpiercer, the futuristic Society on a Train film. She also did Okja for Bong Joon-ho later. And again, in this film, she plays a character who's down in the corner with buck teeth and bad glasses and bad hair. And again, she does not care about how bad she looks. There's lots of actors who won't do certain roles because they'll make them look bad. But Swinton is such a chameleon and so versatile that she doesn't really mind looking like a complete buffoon, which she does in this film. Then we have a Terry Gilliam film, The Zero Theorem, Again, it's a film that I really need to re-watch because I thought it was okay the first time I watched it, but I really need to watch it again. Then we have another Wes Anderson, The Grand Budapest Hotel, which might be my favourite Wes Anderson. And she plays a really old woman who is the subject of Ray Fiennes' affections. Again, she's completely transformed, and again, she doesn't really mind looking bad in the film. Then we have Hail Caesar, another late Coen Brothers film, which again I'd probably need to watch again, but not one of their best. She plays dual roles in this as two sister gossip columnists, and she's quirky and fun. She also did Broken Flowers for Jarmusch, which I have a copy of TV, so I'm not going to show that as a prop. And then another Wes Anderson, Isle of Dogs. She voiced one of the dogs. For some reason I think this is an underrated Wes Anderson. Nobody really talks about it, but I think it's a beautiful little film. And being controversial, I think it's actually, I prefer this to Fantastic Mr. Fox. Again, it might just be because it's set in Japan, but that's just me. And then we have another Jarmusch, The Dead Don't Die, which has one of the greatest casts ever assembled. The film itself is okay. I don't think it works as well as it could have, just because there's a fourth wall break that really annoyed me. But Swinton is wonderful as a Scottish mortuary attendant with samurai skills. But again, another completely different performance. And then the most recent one that I have, The Personal History of David Copperfield, where again she gives a wonderful turn. Again, it's an Armando Ducci film. For me, it was a little disappointing, especially compared to The Death of Stalin. I thought this one was way too long and just not as clever or funny as it thought it was. But again, I'll probably need to re-watch it at some point. So that's my Tilda Swinton collection in physical media. Obviously I've seen more of her films, including her Marvel films, but again, you have to pay the bills at some point, because lots, as you see, you know, she gravitates to certain filmmakers. She also gravitates to personal projects, experimental projects, short form projects, as well as appearing in, you know, Marvel films and The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, etc. So I think she, like I said, she's one of my favourite actors. I think she's one of the best actors in the last few decades. She's always interesting to watch, even if she's just in, you know, makes a cameo for 10 minutes. She's just one of those people with her striking features and unique features. She's always worth watching. So thanks very much for watching this episode of In the Frame. Please let me know your favourite Tilda Swinton films, and what are the films that I don't have in physical media featuring Tilda Swinton that I should get. And hopefully you'll join me again for more In the Frame videos. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.